They say she was a monster. But monsters aren't born screaming in marble temples. Monsters aren't made by betrayal. And monsters don't start as girls who pray. Before the snakes. Before the stone. Before her name became something spoken in fear. Medusa was human. She was the youngest of 3 sisters, born near the restless coastline where the sea never truly sleeps. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal, fierce, untouchable, ancient in their blood. But Medusa was different. She could bleed. She could age. She could die. And she was beautiful. Not in the shallow way poets exaggerate, but in a way that made people pause. Her beauty was quiet and luminous, like sunlight filtered through water. Dark hair flowed down her back in heavy waves. Her eyes held the soft blue-gray of the horizon before a storm. Beauty, in ancient Greece, was never just a blessing. It was a risk. As she grew, the world's gaze grew heavier. Men stared too long. Women whispered. Strangers made offerings she never asked for. Her beauty became a story told about her before she could speak for herself. So she sought sanctuary. She entered the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and war. The temple stood high on polished stone, overlooking the sea. White columns reached toward the sky like frozen light. Inside, the air was cool and still. Oil lamps flickered. Incense curled toward carved ceilings. Athena demanded discipline, purity, devotion. Medusa gave all 3. She became a priestess, sworn to serve the goddess. Her days were filled with ritual, study, and silence. She scrubbed marble floors. She polished bronze shields. She whispered prayers into the hush of dawn. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. The temple was sacred, untouchable, or so she believed. The sea has a way of claiming what it desires. Poseidon had noticed her. Some say he saw her walking the shoreline at dusk. Others say he saw her within Athena's temple, light reflecting in her hair like molten gold. However it began, it ended the same way. He wanted her. Gods did not ask. Gods did not court. Gods took. One night, when the temple lamps burned low and shadows pooled between the columns, the air shifted. The faint scent of salt crept across the marble floor. The ground trembled as though distant waves were crashing somewhere unseen. The doors did not stop him. Medusa's prayers went unanswered. History often softens this part. It calls it seduction, calls it passion. It wraps violence in poetry. But beneath the vaulted ceiling of Athena's sacred temple, a mortal girl was overpowered by a god who knew she could not resist. When it was over, the sea returned to its rhythm. But Medusa never would. Athena saw what had happened. She saw her temple defiled. She saw vows broken within her sacred walls. She saw the trembling figure of her priestess on cold stone. And she made a choice. Poseidon was her equal, powerful, volatile. Punishing him would ignite divine war. So her anger sought a safer target. Medusa. Some say Athena felt betrayed. Some say she felt jealous. Some say she valued pride above justice. Whatever the reason, she did not offer comfort. She offered punishment. Medusa felt it begin at her scalp. A tightening, a burning, a twisting pain so sharp she collapsed. Her hair writhed as if alive. Thick strands split apart, hardened, lengthened. Scales replaced softness. Hissing filled her ears. Her reflection in polished bronze showed horror unfolding in real time. Her once luminous eyes sharpened into something ancient and predatory. Her skin blanched to an unnatural pallor. The air around her seemed to vibrate. Then Athena spoke her final decree. Let your gaze reflect what you have brought into my temple. Anyone who looked directly into Medusa's eyes would turn to stone. Not slain. Not wounded. Frozen forever in the final emotion they felt. Fear. Shock. Regret. Medusa screamed, but her voice echoed hollow in the marble chamber. She had survived violence. And for that, she was condemned. Driven from the temple, shunned by those who once stood beside her, Medusa fled. Her sisters followed her into exile, to the farthest edges of the known world. A barren island of jagged cliffs and twisted trees became her refuge. The first traveler who landed there did not know the legend. He saw a figure in shadow and stepped closer. Medusa tried to warn him. She covered her face. She begged him to leave. But curiosity overpowered caution. He met her eyes. Stone swallowed him in an instant, flesh hardening, breath halting, fear etched forever across his features. Medusa staggered back, horrified. She had become a weapon she never asked to wield. Word spread quickly across kingdoms, a Gorgon with snakes for hair and death in her stare. Men came seeking glory. Warriors came seeking trophies. None came seeking truth. Each time she defended herself, another statue joined the growing graveyard that ringed her island. Sailors mid-scream. Soldiers mid-strike. Thieves mid-prayer. She stopped looking at her own reflection. Years passed. Loneliness does something terrible to a person. At first, she wept for what she'd lost. Her home, her innocence, her future. Then she raged against gods who would never answer her. Eventually, even rage grew quiet. She adapted. The snakes became her senses, tasting the air, warning her of movement long before footsteps touched stone. She learned to fight without hesitation. If the world insisted she was a monster, survival demanded she become one. Far away, a young man named Perseus grew into his destiny. He was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, already marked by fate. When King Polydectes sought to rid himself of the young hero, he set an impossible task. Bring me the head of Medusa. It was meant to be a death sentence. But gods delight in spectacle. Athena, the same goddess who had cursed Medusa, guided Perseus. Hermes placed a curved blade in his hand. Nymphs gifted him a mirrored shield polished to brilliance, a helm of invisibility, and a satchel to carry what must not be seen. Tools crafted for a singular purpose. Kill without looking. When Perseus reached the island, the air was heavy with storm. Stone figures lined the cliffs like a silent army. He did not see them directly. He saw their reflections. Among them, sleeping in a hollow of rock, lay Medusa. Even with serpents coiled around her face, there was something heartbreakingly human in her stillness. In sleep, the tension left her features. The snakes rested quietly. She looked almost young again. Perhaps she dreamed of marble halls, of salt wind before it tasted of betrayal, of a life untouched by gods. Perseus raised his blade, guided only by the shield's reflection. He did not hesitate. The strike was swift. No triumphant roar. No monstrous shriek. Just a heavy silence as her head fell from her shoulders. From the wound sprang two beings long dormant, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior of gold. Even in death, she gave birth to wonder. Perseus sealed her head in the satchel, careful never to meet her eyes. He would use it to turn enemies to stone, to save a princess, to defeat tyrants. He would be celebrated. Medusa would not. Athena mounted the severed head upon her shield, the aegis, wielding its power as her own. The face once condemned became a symbol carved into armor and temples. Over centuries, the story shifted. In some tellings, Medusa was born monstrous. In others, her assault vanished from the narrative entirely. Heroes remained pure. Gods remained unquestioned. But myths are mirrors. In one reflection, she is a beast slain by bravery. In another, she is a victim punished for surviving what no mortal could resist. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is this. Every statue on that island wore an expression of fear. None wore cruelty. If you stood among them, you might begin to wonder who the real monster was. The woman whose gaze turned men to stone. Or the gods and kings who shaped her fate, then called it justice. And somewhere in the space between legend and memory, beneath a marble ceiling lit by trembling lamps, A young priestess still whispers her prayers, unaware that the sea is coming. Unaware that survival will cost her everything. Unaware that history will remember her not as a girl, but as a monster.